Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 160 of Into the Outer Realms. And I love opportunities like tonight because we've been doing very, very heavy stuff, especially with Sinister Mysteries, Operation Condor, and Air America. And 2 weeks ago, we did the prison industrial complex, which was a very popular episode that sparked a lot of conversation. And that's the idea, to present you with the facts and then let you go. And I get all these phone calls sometimes where people go, and maybe you could back off the government and these programs and the military industrial complex and all this stuff. So last week I had Abbey Road back behind me. We did the mystery of, is Paul really dead? What is that mythos? Or did the Beatles concoct the whole thing, like Paul said in an interview in New Orleans in 2011? We had a lot of fun with that. Well, tonight is near and dear to my heart because, as you all know, I am a writer, I'm a performer, I'm a teacher. And tonight's guest is not only a truly sensational human being, you're going to completely see this. He wrote this wonderful book, My Runaway Summer. I was able to read it end of last year, do a review, which is on New Mystic Reviews. Please check it out. Larry and I have known each other for 10 years, but we're going to tell you all this as we go. I'm sure you're going to love him as much as I do. He's known as Larry Rock and Roll Schardt, a wonderful philosophy in very trying times. And that's why I think we needed to have Larry on the show as well. Here in America, because I know we have an international audience, which I'm very grateful for, who's always curious, what's going on in the States? This whole debt ceiling thing, banks are failing. JP Morgan just took over another California bank. It's looking a little like 2007. The Fed just raised the interest rates, on and on and on. There's war, there's uncertainty, there's gun violence and knife violence every day in the papers. So we're going to kick back tonight. We're going to look at the positive side of life and call upon Larry's talent as a philosopher, as well as an English teacher and author. So welcome to the show. It's good to see you all.
There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon. The preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts, because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's, for the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey into the outer realms.
Well, our good friend of the show, Lori, says, I could use some inspiration. Lori, I guarantee stake my reputation on the fact that you will receive it tonight. Larry Rock and Roll Schardt is a best-selling, award-winning author. His latest book, My Runaway Summer, is a best-selling memoir. It's a timeless and universal coming-of-age story about his running away from home at the age of 15 to escape violence, alcohol, and rage. Although Larry doesn't consider himself a sports writer, his book, James Conner, The Triumphs of a Football Hero, is rated one of the best sports biography books of all time by Book Authority, and it's been featured on CNN, Forbes, and Inc. Dr. Schardt is on a journey of discovering and sharing the power of living a life of happiness and success that rocks. He's going to explain that tonight because Larry's passion is people. Through the power of story, In his uplifting and motivational Success That Rocks presentations, Dr. Schardt illustrates that no matter how terrible your start, there is light at the end of your tunnel. He has entertained audiences across the United States, encouraging, motivating, and inspiring executives, employees, students, and seniors to live life to the fullest. Also, for the past 30 years, Dr. Schardt has been inspiring students at Penn State in his writing-intensive teaching natural resources and independent study classes. He has also taught at the University of Pittsburgh at Bradford, for whom he just received the Distinguished Alumni Award last weekend. We'll talk about that. Larry's co-coordinator of over 20 mindful writers retreats, where writers of all levels get together to share creative space and spirit in the enchanted Laurel Highlands of Western Pennsylvania. We have a lot of audience members from West Virginia and Pennsylvania. I know some of you are writers. You're going to be very interested in that, I'm sure. Dr. Schardt also helps writers as a keynote speaker and regular presenter at writers' conferences, which is where I met him 10 years ago. Every day since late 2014, Larry's been writing a Facebook blog to entertain, celebrate, contribute, and pay forward the positive in life. Please follow Larry, Larry, Schardt, Schardt, on Facebook. You'll be glad you did. You'll get every day off to a positive start. Wednesday, 7 p.m., he does a stroll through the yard with Larry Schardt on Facebook Live. Along with his other writings, he has stories in Chicken Soup for the Soul, Find Your Happiness, The Power of Gratitude, The Best Advice I Ever Had, and Your 10 Keys to Happiness. Some of his other short stories are included in anthologies. Schardt has a PhD in extension education with a minor in instructional systems design and a master's degree in extensive education and communication from Penn State. When someone is this accomplished, I take the time to let everybody know. Let's welcome Larry Schardt, please. Rock and roll. Good evening.
Rock and roll. I'm just a rock and roller, man. Inside, it's just all about the positive, the rock and roll, the love and life, and making friends. And God bless you all. Hey, hello out there. Hello, Joey. It's great to see you again, and it's great to be connected and on your show. I really appreciate it. I guess I'm part of the outer realm officially. It's a fun place to be. Good.
It is.
Good. And Lori, I'm hope I get a chance to make you at least smile more than once. We'll make it good for you. Thank you. Okay.
Heidi's already spreading the word. Rock and roll with two hearts. So there you go.
Thank you.
So 10 years ago, I was invited as a teacher to the West Virginia Writers Conference. And I remember being in the common room and seeing this striking man in a tie, but with longish hair and rocking the white like Steve Martin does, and going, now I don't remember who approached who. I don't know if it was a mutual thing. I don't know if you remember, but that was a great moment.
Yeah, it was. And I don't remember because there's so many great people at the West Virginia Writers Conference. I love the West Virginia Writers Conference. Actually, the Penn Writers Conference is in a couple of weeks too. And actually, I'm getting off subject already.
No, there is no off subject. Let's just wrap.
I'm going to be doing the welcome at the Penn Writers Conference at the Friday opening luncheon, and the kind people who are running it have made a special title for me. They're called me the Ambassador of Happiness. So that's my title, and I'm going to do the welcome, and I'm going to try to, my whole role in life basically is to try to make people feel happy and welcome and feel the joy of life. I mean, we all obviously can't be happy every second of every day, although I definitely try, but at least we can have that, we can focus on joy, come back to our joy, come back to our center, whether we're suffering grief or whatever's going on in our life. If we come back to that joy, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. There, I totally got off there.
No, it's beautiful. Seriously. I didn't send you an outline. I have some notes. We're going to let this river ramble.
Good.
Because really what I would like to do tonight, the spiritual aspect of life, this keeping your vibration high is how I always put it. So you are aligning with the good things. Larry, I just spent 4 months. I was doing a gig that was rewarding in a lot of ways, but it was very much in the agency and branding world, which for an artist was a very, very interesting thing. And happiness, as you know, for a lot of people is a brand. I'm out. I'm positivity. You genuinely and sincerely do it. And tonight, that's what I really want to talk to you about more than anything else is how you came to this, because I believe is extremely well earned. But let's start with peace, love, and rock and roll. When and how was that adopted as your mantra?
It was probably an accident, but it's been with me for as long as I can remember. I mean, I certainly, even back when I ran away from home, back when I was 15, I was peace, love, and I was always a rock and roll. Peace, love, and rock and roll was kind of just tied in with that whole hippie thing. And I was raised, rock and roll was really saved my life in many ways. My dad and I, we fought constantly. That's in the book. And you mentioned that, but I'm the oldest of 9 kids. I'm blessed to have a phenomenal family, but my dad only ever hit me. Thank heavens. Thank heavens. I mean, not thank heavens that he hit me, but thank heavens he didn't hit anybody else. So a lot of times I felt like a victim. You know, I don't like that victim mentality now, but when I was a kid, I felt like I was a victim. And so my dad didn't work for 20 years. He was out of a job for 20 years. I helped raise the family. I went out and got a job from at least 8 or 9 years old. I babysat. I delivered papers every morning. I shoveled snow. I did whatever I could to make a buck, and I gave the money to my mom. My dad would steal the money. He would sit on his butt all day, watch TV all day long, sit on his butt, and then steal money and go out and get drunk at night. And in the meantime, my mom got a job at Mellon Bank as a key punch operator, and she worked at nights from 10 at night till 6 in the morning in downtown Pittsburgh, which was about 20 minutes from I grew up in Mount Lebanon, which is South Hills, which I have no idea how how my mom afforded to keep us in our house. Well, we were just talking before the show, Joey, about getting foreclosed on. Our house was constantly foreclosed on. I had to go tear down the sheriff's sale signs. It was so embarrassing for my mom. She was such a good woman. But anyway, where was I going with this? I was going
how you came to peace, love, and rock and roll.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. So yeah. Oh, thank you. So my dad, the tension between my dad and I was really horrible, and I was his punching bag, and we just fought constantly, and because of the fact that he didn't have a job and I did, that caused a lot of resentment. Because here I am, he's telling me how to live my life, and I'm making the money in the family. And I was, granted, it was a minimal amount of money. I mean, I'm a kid, but it was all I had. So we had this constant battle going on, and you never knew what was going to trigger my dad. He would just tear the house apart sometimes, and alcohol was really, really his fuel. Oh, it was terrible. So it was the time when we talked about the generation gap. There was a huge generation gap between me and my dad. I always said it was a Grand Canyon of a generation gap between my dad and I. So because of the fact that all happened when I was growing up, I mean, it was like a miracle, really, really was like a miracle that it all happened. And so anything my dad hated, I loved, and anything I loved, my dad hated. So my dad hated long hair. So I grew my hair, oh my gosh, almost down to my waist. And my dad hated blue jeans. That's all I ever wore. He hated bell bottoms. And back in the day, I had these huge bell bottoms. And actually, I got them right here, man. Check these out.
Oh, whoa. Show and tell. Right on. Those are cool.
These are, they're a lot of fun to have. I think I probably had these on when I ran away from home, but thank you very much.
Larry, you got a whole fan club in the house today.
Gotta love you. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you. My dad, he hated these. And my dad also hated, thank you. My dad hated bare feet. And because I had such big bell bottoms, I could hide my feet under my belt. So I wore bare feet to school just to like be a radical hippie, just thank you very much for the nice compliments. I love you all. Thank you. So I'd wear bare feet to school, and I'd come home, and my dad would just, I'd be so mad. But the thing that my dad hated worse than anything in the world was rock and roll. So it kind of like just became my mantra from way back from the time I was a kid. And so it just stuck. And so that's kind of where I got the peace, love, and rock and roll thing. That's just a fun. And actually, I wouldn't want anyone to go through what I went through, but I'm glad I did, because it just gave me a different perspective on life. And actually, in the end, I kind of hate to ruin the end of my book, but I'd say it's still it's still, I think, a good read if you want to read about that era and about, I mean, I think it kind of takes you there and takes you inside my mind. But the end of the book is many years after I came home, many years after being a grown up, and my dad and I became friends. We became very good friends, actually. And actually, I would say I was one of the few people my dad really, really hung around with, in a way. And I live in Lewistown, Pennsylvania, which is just outside of 30 miles away from State College, the closest town. And Pittsburgh is in Western Pennsylvania, about 4-hour drive away. And my dad died in 2001, but in his later years, his favorite thing to do was come visit Larry. And I'm like, wow, this is such a transformation. He got a job, and he never quit drinking, but it was more under control in the later years. And but I'm so glad we ended up being friends in the end. I mean, it was so important to be friends. And when I would get together with my dad and mom, they would come up every fall. They would come up to watch the live, or they would come up to watch the leaves change every fall. They come up from the city of Pittsburgh. I live in the country. They would watch the leaves change. We'd spend a week or two together. It was the coolest time to spend time with them. And every once in a while, my mom would say Ed to my dad. Ed, my mom's name is Mercedes, by the way, kind of a fun
cool
name.
Yeah.
She would say, Ed, don't you ever feel bad? Aren't you ever going to apologize to Larry? That's what she'd say. And I'd say, Dad, Mom, I really don't need an apology. I really don't need it. I never needed an apology. I looked into my dad's life. I wouldn't be the person I am today. And I'm certainly not saying I'm perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I wouldn't be the person I am today if my dad and I had gotten along. I wouldn't have, my life would be so different. And again, I would not want anyone to ever go through what I went through. I mean, it was terrifying, and running away from home, it was a terrifying experience too. Just finding a place to stay was the most terrifying part. Actually the scariest part was the fear of getting caught, getting sent back home,
Right.
But that's all in the book. But hopping ahead many years, I had mentioned to you that I lived with a woman named Judy, and Judy was just this really upbeat, phenomenal, rocking and rolling person. And just learning some happiness stuff from her. And then I realized it takes as much effort to be a downer as it does to be an upper. So you might as well focus on being an upper and enjoying the heck out of life. And actually, I think you burn less brain cells when you're happier. You're creating brain cells. You're creating that happiness vibe. I don't know what it is. I know that sounds hippie, but I'm a hippie, so what can I say? But but it really it perpetuates itself. And what I teach, I finished my semester. I turned in the grades yesterday. I had a phenomenal class. But I think when I'm up there smiling, and my students are smiling back at me. I can, when you do that, it just, you can feel the energy just building on itself, and they're supercharging me and I'm supercharging them, and we're having just this phenomenal time. And that's kind of all that whole happiness thing, which has worked out well. I like the effort that goes into happiness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's unpack some of that opening monologue. That was awesome. That was terrific. So let's go back and grab some points. My dad came home from Vietnam, bringing the war with him. I was the oldest son. I was named after him. It was a very different situation. Dad rarely missed a day of work, kind of made up for it on the weekend, that kind of thing.
Okay.
But a lot of, didn't get some breaks when he came back. The perception of soldiers coming back from Vietnam. My grandfather, both of my grandfathers asked my dad, don't wear your uniform on your wedding. Like, it's embarrassing. Like, just wear a tuxedo, which was devastating for him. And
yeah, right. That era.
Yeah. And I have to say, yeah, it doesn't come down to forgiveness. It comes down to being in the moment. And my dad and I have had some very close moments. And
Beautiful.
yeah, so I understood that when I'm trying to remember now. I remember sitting there, I had the book, and you were like, okay, and here's the story. My dad and I became really great friends. I was like, yes, this is, a lot of things go on with the oldest son and with the father, and it's so, Oedipal, and so ancient, and all of those kinds of things, but it doesn't make it any easier. And you mentioned the foreclosure. We lost our house. The VA, the Veterans Administration, foreclosed on my Vietnam veteran father, and my parents had no place to go, so we just stayed. So woke up one morning, and Dad was taking me to work. It was in the summer. I used to go to the PAL and shoot pool and hang out or whatever. Okay. And it was August 5th. I'll never forget.
That's my birthday. Okay.
Oh, goodness gracious. So August 5th is about 80, 83, somewhere like that. I was transitioned between middle school and high school, and he got a phone call about 11 o'clock in the morning. And he said, come on, we gotta go. We gotta go home. And we were driving in the car down the Jersey Pike, and or probably Garden State Parkway. And he said, listen, when we get home, the sheriff's department and a moving truck are going to be taking everything out of our house. We don't live there anymore. And it was a really I cannot keep a secret. When Tanya and I were going to get engaged 25 years ago, I had to tell people, like, I don't like surprises. I don't like secrets. I don't, even for the well and the good. Yeah, I like people to know. I just got to say, so we could move on and get some of these other comments. I don't think we've ever been part of a bar crawl on Into the Outer Realms before, so this is a first. So thank you, ERM Bar Crawl. It's very cool to be hanging out tonight. Hello, Chassis, the College of Earth and Mineral Sciences. Very cool in the house.
Good.
So people saying hello, but so that was the one thing I wanted to say. And the other thing was, as they say, it takes more muscles to frown than to smile. And when you choose happiness, make it a choice. Keep your vibration elevated. Keep your candle lit, which is sort of my mantra.
Great, good.
You find that people align to that. Larry, that I had a social justice theater company in West Virginia. And which was very hard to do in West Virginia because they kind of like things to be the way they are. There's not a lot of diversity and all, but you go where the need is. You go where the need is. And we would do this experiment as part of a civil and human rights piece that we would do, where I had a love chant and I had a hate chant. So hate, annihilation, devastation, prejudice, war and prejudice. And then love was love, communication, all these things. And I would take two groups of students, and the hate mantra would win. It'd win. It would go. And the love kids, I'd say, don't give up. Keep it going. Keep it going. Inevitably, Larry, I'm here to tell you that after about 15 minutes, not only were the love kids devastating the hate kids, but the hate kids were like, can we stop? Can we start the love chant? And they'd be all dancing in circles. And that's what you and I share that philosophy. that
Beautiful, man.
energy, it's the energy of things, right? And so let's get back to a little bit of the outline, but I love you freeform, and I think it's beautiful.
Thanks.
So
By
how
the way, I just have to tell you, I just actually saw on the side all the people. Mine was blank until I saw this little thing said comments. I turned it on. I saw thank you, everybody. Thank you for I love you all, man. Thank you for being along.
they're all having a good time.
Oh, great. Thank you. Joey, you asked me not to get off track, and here I go. Immediately we get off track. Go ahead. Sorry, brother.
No, we're off the tracks, man. We are free roaming.
Okay, good. It's all part of the free form hippie.
It is. It's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be amazing hour and 10 minutes.
Thank you, brother.
But how does peace, love, and rock and roll hippie from the 70s? I have my Morrison Hotel behind me tonight. It was 1970 when you made your Escape. That came out that February, so it's probably part of your soundtrack, I'm guessing. Yeah. How does he write one of the best sports book of all times? How'd that happen?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm a member of several writer groups, and I belong to the Greater Lehigh Valley Writers Group, which is in Eastern Pennsylvania, which at the time I was dating a woman who lives in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and which is in the Lehigh Valley. So I was over that way quite a bit. So I joined the Greater Lehigh Valley Writers Group. Great people, great organization. And I got an email from them, and they said they were looking for someone to write a book on the Steelers. I'm like, well, that sounds interesting. I love the Steelers. I grew up in Pittsburgh. That was probably the only thing my dad and I agreed on back in the day, but we couldn't watch a football game together because we just, it just wasn't one of those things, but we both did love the Steelers. So I saw this. So I emailed and I told them, I do a daily Facebook post. It was a miracle that I was doing that because it tied right in. And I had done some posts on the Steelers and how much I love the Steelers. So I sent them a couple copies of my Facebook posts. And then I also said my brother Dave-O hasn't missed a home Steelers game in, I think it's 36 or 37 years now.
Whoa.
And so they wrote me back and they said, we already hired someone, but we want you instead, which was a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Wow.
So then I find out that they wanted me to write a biography of James Conner, who was a running back for the Steelers, who started off at Pitt. And the story of James Conner, it's a great story. And I'm so glad I wrote it because I think he's an inspiration. James Conner was at Pitt, their star running back, and he got real sick one season. And it turns out he had Hodgkin's lymphoma. He got injured and then he got real sick. And luckily he got injured because they were able to diagnose Hodgkin's lymphoma. So he had to undergo some pretty intensive chemotherapy. So he would go straight from chemotherapy with the mask on. This is before we were all doing masks, with the mask on, and go to practice right after chemo. I mean, most people, when you get a chemo, they just want to die. So anyway, they said that the book was going to be on James Conner, and I thought, oh, this will be great. This will be great. So I took the opportunity, and it was luckily at the time I was dating Gail, the woman from Bethlehem, she was just a really wonderful person, really helped me a lot. But I signed a contract, I think it was February 24th, and they wanted the book by April 15th. Now, I don't know if you realize, that is such a short amount of time.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And besides that, I'm dating Gail, who lives in Bethlehem, which is 3.5 hours away. I'm teaching at Penn State, and April is my most intense month at the university. But and this is due April 15th. And I signed the contract to get it done, which was and it was insane. I really would not have been able to do it without Gail, because I stayed at her house for a couple times. Well, I couldn't stay there because I was teaching, but during spring break, I was there and she cooked my meals. And anytime I got off track, she'd say, "Get back in the book." She was really good at cracking that whip. But I had to go through every single football game that James Conner ever played from the time he was in junior high school through high school. He was an amazing star. And then with Pitt and then with the Steelers. And I had to do the research. I went to ESPN. I went to the NFL. I'm really not a sports writer. I love the game and I learned a whole lot about it. And I don't think I'll do another sports biography. I'd be really hard pressed to do it again. I mean, but it was a great education. It was great. And I made an agreement with the publisher that I would get them some, I forget how many words. I think it was 1,000 words every week. Now, it had to be more than that. I can't remember. But every Monday, I would send them what I had. And it was just an insane effort. And I fortunately I was blessed to get it done. And actually, that's this book here.
Oh, nice.
Thanks. And book, I can't think of the name right now. You just mentioned it, but
Book Authority.
Book Authority. They chose it as one of the 24 best sports biographies of all time, which is quite a compliment. I mean, I'm really complimented by the fact that I'm not even really a sports writer. But the crazy thing about writing a sports biography is I had to describe every game he was ever in. And how many times can you say they drove the ball down the field, they passed the ball down the field, and you have to make it interesting, So it was luckily I had good editors, and it was a Herculean effort. And again, Gail was instrumental. Even though we parted ways a year ago, and she probably will never hear me complimenting her, but I do want to compliment her because she was so good in this. And one of the really cool things about this book. One of the many really cool things about this book, I have to show you. The publisher let me put a picture in here. This is my brother Davo, the one who hasn't missed a Steelers game in all those years.
That's awesome. That's a great photo.
So thanks. He was so excited that his picture was in there, and so that was a pleasure to be able to do those kinds of fun things. But anyway, so that's how I got into the James Conner book, and
so writers and people who aren't writers, say yes to life. Take a chance. Make it happen.
Exactly.
We have to do it. So, Larry, you've mentioned several times that you're a hippie.
Yeah.
And in the book, you define a hippie. So share with us the Larry Schardt definition of a hippie.
Well, I can read. You want me to read it out of the book? I mean,
if that's what you like to do, go ahead and do it.
Because actually, I'll just I put a lot of thought into this because all my life I considered myself a hippie. There are all kinds of definitions of hippies out there, and people associate drugs with hippies and stuff like that. And I mean, I was no angel or anything, but that wasn't part of it. So I'll read you what I say.
Yes, please.
Okay, a hippie is an idealistic dreamer with an eternally young heart and a free spirit, who promotes good and shares positivity. A hippie lives and believes in peace, love, kindness, and freedom. A hippie can have long hair, wear unconventional clothes, and or sport a headband, but those things are not necessary. A hippie is a hippie on the inside and radiates love from their heart and soul, no matter what they look like on the outside. A hippie doesn't conform to the establishment, also known as the man, that promotes war, hate, greed, control, and animosity. So I rebelled against all of those, what I consider negatives, and that's what I think a hippie is. Hippies are united by their idealism, gentle spirits, and love of music, especially rock and roll, or whatever makes you rock. Thank you. That's my I guess, somewhat textbook definition of being a hippie. It's all about the idealism, it's all about just always believing in that dream. I don't know if you probably know the song by Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, "Almost Cut My Hair," which is kind of a hippie very much of a hippie anthem. It's always been an anthem to me because I had long hair for so long, and I really loved it long. I don't particularly like long gray hair on me. On other people, it looks great. But when David Crosby wrote that song, the idea is not really almost cut my hair, but almost what he's saying basically is almost sold out, basically, but he didn't. And that's how I feel. Even though it's short on now, I'm never selling out. I'm always going to have that.
It has just enough length with the tie that you say, go ahead and try to figure me out.
Exactly. Because it's a Pink Floyd tie, but
yeah, my hair is getting a little thinner now, so I wear it shorter than I ever did before. And sometimes, last June I was on tour as Allen Ginsberg, so I had the whole beard and I went the whole way. But it's very interesting. I remember in Fairmont, West Virginia, sitting at a Rotary Club meeting.
Okay.
And so here's this artist, got the art center, the New Mystics, and what is this spooky thing? And,
beautiful.
Everybody, trying to make sense of Joey Medea, right? And people going, oh, I bet you I know how you vote, and you with your earrings and your And I told him my whole list of how I voted across my life, and I said, you don't know me. And Larry, you'll probably appreciate this. I have two hoops. I got one when I was 20 and one when I was 30.
Okay.
And then my beautiful bride said, yeah, no more hoops. I think 2 is enough. And that was fine. But I remember going home for the weekend, talking to my dad, who's the chief petty officer in the Navy, right? Everything with
okay.
And I said, Dad, I'm going to get my ear pierced. And he said, do me a favor. He said, all the guys with the earrings were the guys who were throwing stones at us and calling us baby killers and all that stuff. He said, make that earring a symbol of good, of positive, of standing for yourself and thinking for yourself. And that was the agreement, quote unquote. I was 20 years old. I wasn't asking permission, but it meant a lot to me because I knew what those things meant to him. And he always kind of knew that my long beard and my long hair and my earrings was more about my individuality than rebelling.
Beautiful.
It was about me. It wasn't about, And I kind of see the same. I kind of see the same in you. So Charles says you have a real fan club here, my friend. We're going to have to have you back again. Charles, a great friend of the show. Wonderful man, says great definition.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you.
And
brother.
Here you go. He says the heart does not change when the hair goes.
That's true. Exactly. Yeah, I had long hair up until 1980, and well into the disco era and all that kind of stuff. And actually, just a little bit of a tangent, which is actually that's all I've been doing.
No, because I'm going to go way off script in a couple of minutes. So go ahead.
Okay. I actually got a tentative job with a disco band, and my hair was down to here, and I thought disco was a joke. I just thought it was a goofy joke. And when I went and I saw people took it seriously, I'm like, you got to be kidding me, man. So I walked away from that. But I had this thing. I love rock and roll so much that disco came along and tried to kill rock and roll, and it didn't make it, So that, it's just kind of my goofy way of thinking about disco. But anyway, so
did you get the job with the disco band?
What's that?
Did you get the job with the disco band?
I turned them down.
Oh, okay, right up. Oh, so you stuck with it. Yeah.
That wasn't my scene at all. I was totally into the peace and love, and that was just too materialistic. I equated that with materialism, and so I've been always tried to just love people for who they are instead of what they own. So
that's very cool. Yeah, I think the disco era is encapsulated for me in two very different ways. The Who's Sister Disco, right? That kind of encapsulates it. And the second one is Paul Stanley from Kiss, of all people, going, oh, I could write a disco song. Maybe I could write. So they wrote I Was Made for Loving You, which was ironically, one of their most successful tunes. So that great Dynasty album that I won at the Jersey Shore a week before it came out. I was the first kid. So so let's so you quote, you're an English teacher, right?
No, actually, I teach natural resources.
Oh, wow.
It's a writing intensive class. So
Okay.
I have, oh my gosh, you should see the project these kids just turned in. I mean, they do an amazing job, but it's writing intensive. So it's I mean, I had a project this semester that was 250 pages long. I mean, just it's called a sense of place project. But in that project, I work with them on their grammar and their, all of the white space and all the things that are important in there. So
I'm going to go a slightly different direction to get there.
Okay.
I am a writing teacher and have been for a long time. And poetry is a hard sell to students until you remind them, song lyrics are in fact poetry.
Absolutely.
Then they go, oh, wait a minute. Right. Now I dig it. Now I get it. So you, in the book, this does come back to the book, folks. It's not random. Neil Young, John Lennon, Jerry Garcia, Jimi Hendrix, Charles Bukowski, who's a writer, not a musician, right? And Tom Robbins, great novelist. But you open up the book with all these great quotes. And then every chapter has one or two set of song lyrics that are from the era, which was just wonderful.
Thanks. Yeah, every chapter is titled after a song that was out in that summer. And I had to do a lot of research to make sure, because, you have songs in your head for forever. So I had to make sure they were out when I ran away from home, and I would have been listening to them, or they would have been playing them on the boardwalk. Because back then, everybody listened to rock and roll, which was a unifying thing. I like the fact that we all listened to the same kind of music, because it pulled us together and united us. And most of the lyrics were just so positive. Like we had earlier, we were discussing, it might have been before we were on the air, but the song "Get Together" by the Youngbloods. Everybody get together, try to love one another right now. That to me is an anthem of the way I believe life should be. I mean, everybody get together, love one another right now. I mean, that's what it's all about, and I'll always believe that. I mean, it's just one of those things that was planted in here,
Yeah, the music was amazing. So you have everything from The Sound of Silence to Dazed and Confused to I'm a Girl Watcher and Dear Mr. Fantasy, and it really showed good times, bad times. You got a bit of Zeppelin in there.
Yeah, I had to get Zeppelin. I had to get definitely.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just had to get the Dead in there. There was a couple of bands I had to get in there, and the song "I'm a Girl Watcher." It's so different from the stuff I really listened to. But back in those days, it was where my head was as a 15-year-old. I'm on the beach living by myself, and all these pretty girls in bikinis. And, I'm struggling with trying to stay alive, but still falling in love at the same time with all these pretty girls. And I do end up meeting a pretty girl there, and who, by the way, one of the big questions people always ask, I never, ever, ever heard from her or saw her again. I don't even know her last name, because I didn't realize I was going to leave when I left. And so
yeah, I got really hooked into her story. That was Anne, right?
Yes, right. Yes.
Yeah, and I didn't even have to look because I can't find it. So there you go. So no, it really strikes me. So the book opens up where you have a bad scene with your dad. He puts you up against the wall and stuff. You're like, I'm out of here. And you go down to the park, and there's this van with a PA system on the top is playing Hendrix all along the Watchtower.
Good.
And you're like, you know what, guys? I gotta run. I gotta get out of here. And I just da 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 da. And it's like, I'm gone. And so you do, it's like, okay, everybody's going to San Francisco, right? Mamas and the papas.
Yes, absolutely.
But Jersey Shore is closer and it's more obtainable.
Right, exactly.
So you hook up with a dude who's doesn't have your best interests at heart. And
Yeah, that's for sure. That is for sure.
what's amazing is it's called My Runaway Summer. But Larry, how long were you actually away from home?
I was only gone about a week.
Yeah.
But I was on the path, and I'm glad. I mean, thank goodness it was only a week. I mean, because I could have been. I wouldn't be probably talking to you today. I could have been a homeless person somewhere. The police, they ended up. Actually, I went back years later, and talked to them, but they were all retired by the time I got back there. But I was getting prepared to go to San Francisco. I met a guy named Mark. He was an older guy. He was like 19. To me as a 15-year-old man,
Sure.
He's this 19-year-old older dude. He knows life, and we were going to hitchhike to Haight-Ashbury together. That was our game plan. We were going to make it through the summer. I was going to get enough money, and we were going to hitchhike out there. I mean, I hitchhiked everywhere back then, and I hitchhiked from Pittsburgh out to the ocean, and so anyway, God intervened and made sure that he protected me, because I've always been so naive and trusting of everybody. I still am, and who knows what could have happened. Just thank heavens God intervened, and again, I met Anne, and that was a cool experience. And as a 15-year-old, and actually still to this day, I fall madly in love. I mean, it's just a fact of life. But I fell madly in love with Anne, and it was so cool. And then I had to leave, and then just never heard from her again, never saw her again, and but that's life, because it just goes on. And if I had well, actually, just to throw this out, I wrote a story in this book called The Shell. My story in here is called The Gazebo at Silver Lake. Shell House was in Rehoboth Beach. Okay. There's a reason I'm changing gears for a second here.
Sure.
The story I wrote in Shell House called The Gazebo at Silver Lake is kind of what I wished had happened with Anne. It's going back, and reconnecting and all the kind of fun stuff. I never went back to Ocean. I was in Ocean City in 1970. I never went back till 1982. So I mean, it just, and when I went back, Shriver's Pavilion, which is where all the hippies hung around, was on 9th Street. It was gone. I was heartbroken when I went back. Oh my gosh, it was like somebody ripped part of my soul out. And what had happened, I guess in 1979, there was a fire and the pavilion burned down. And so it's not there anymore. But I still have a special place too in my heart for Shriver's, which is a candy store on the corner of the boardwalk and 9th, right on the boardwalk. It's a landmark in Ocean City. And, it's just, there's just something beautiful about that place that conjures up these just great memories of, one of the possible titles for my book was My Summer of Love, which totally fit the times, but I wasn't there all summer. So that's why it's My Runaway Summer, because it's one component of the summer, and it was during the summer. So, but anyway,
that title would have worked, because of course 1969 was the end of the Summer of Love between Manson and Altamont and all that. And
that's what some people say.
Okay.
I refuse to believe. I'm still living this summer.
There you go.
And Charles Manson, he was not a hippie. He was
no
in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
He had long hair, and that people said because of that, but he was not a hippie. And all the want, but we had Woodstock. I mean, I ran away in 70, and it was like 10 months or 11 months after Woodstock. So we were still living high on Woodstock. And I talk about Woodstock a lot in here. And I talked about Woodstock a lot that summer, because it was there. It was present. It was part of the whole generation. And at that time, I probably had never even heard about Altamont. I didn't hear about Altamont until the movie Gimme Shelter came out.
Right on.
1972.
Yeah.
And Charles Manson, of course, everybody, but I just,
I'm with you.
Yeah, good. And so it
Yeah.
was still all about San Francisco, like 1970 was still the Haight-Ashbury district was the happening place. And honest to gosh, I was so naive. I thought I'd go there and the hippies these older hippies would accept me and I'd be taken care of and maybe fall in love with Grace. Of course, I was in love with Grace Slick. I mean, or maybe meet Grace Slick. I don't know. For those of you who might not know, Grace Slick was the lead singer of the Jefferson Airplane, which was a psychedelic San Francisco hippie band. I did meet Grace Slick actually in Pittsburgh one time.
Oh, cool!
I met her at the Syrian Mosque, and I was so tongue-tied. I couldn't even communicate. But of course, every teenage guy was madly in love with Grace Slick. I mean, she was just a beautiful, beautiful icon of the time, and their music just spoke to me too. Grace Slick spoke to my heart and soul. So, yes.
Charles brings up Kent State, right?
Right.
We're dead in Ohio. Were you too young to really hook into the meaning of that, or?
No, I was actually, I was pretty impacted by that. That was really kind of like brought it home to me a lot. Yeah. And actually that summer, I'm sure we would have been talking about Penn State because it was just a couple of months after Kent State. I said Penn State accidentally. Kent State. And I can remember that the picture on the cover of Life magazine of the girl kneeling next to the kid that was shot. And even way back when I was in, and I've talked about this quite a bit, but with my students and stuff, I went to Catholic grade school for a few years.
Me too.
Oh yeah, until my family could no longer afford to send me
there. Me too.
And I asked the nuns, I said, if thou shalt not kill is a commandment, why do we have war? And they said, well, it's different with war. I'm like, no. There's no little asterisk that says thou shalt not kill except in war. It's thou shalt not kill. I mean, plain and simple. It just blows my mind how we can have wars. I mean, I don't mean to go down that subject, but I've always been. So you asked about Kent. So Charles asked about Kent State. I certainly was impacted by that, and it made me even more anti-war and more anti-establishment because there was the establishment killing young hippies going to college on a college campus. It was devastating. But anyway.
No, two men that we said this was going to be freewheeling. So two men that I admire, Tom Hartman, who I just love what Tom Hartman has to say, and Michael Moore. Okay. I was listening. They both came out with some radio shows because the New York Times not long ago came out with an article about how Reagan had bargained privately with Iran to keep the hostages there because it would ensure his election. Because if Jimmy Carter brought the hostages home, it was game over. Well, Nixon did the same thing in '68, swung a deal with the North Vietnamese to not come to the table. And or swung a deal with the South Vietnamese to not come to the table. North Korea was, North Vietnam was ready to come to the table. Like Johnson was talking to them. Treasonous acts, both these guys talk. Yeah. So I'm with you. And I came up, and I'm a guy who almost went into the United States Navy and went to officers candidate school twice. And it just didn't. Yeah. But looking back on it, on this show, like I said, we do Air America, Operation Condor, the military industrial complex. But watching or knowing the story of my dad, 17 years old, couldn't afford college. So he goes into the Navy.
Sure.
And gets exposed to Agent Orange. And he's still dying of it, 60 years later. My father-in-law was in Air Force intelligence and would take planes in and out of Thailand, cargo planes where the Agent Orange, the barrels had been transported, and he's got a plethora of things. And that's really where I went. My dad came home. He wasn't diagnosed as having PTSD for a long time. I was already out of the house in college and all. But what those guys saw, like your dad, what they saw and what they processed and what they came home with, and no help to process that, to work that out, to there's, how do you not approach that with love? How do you not approach that with understanding?
Sure.
Yeah. So I think, go ahead.
That was a big thing with my dad. My dad, when I looked into his life and I really started to understand the guy. He stormed Normandy Beach. I mean, he stood behind one of those, I forget what you call those boats, but
yeah,
the
troop ships. Yeah.
Yeah. And they were hundreds of yards out in the ocean, and they didn't know when that gate was going to drop, and they would go right in. I mean, the German guns were aimed at those ships. Yeah. And he had to hear his buddies screaming and die. I mean, I can't even comprehend it. When I think about that, I mean, it totally messed my dad. I mean, he's living with this hell, and they didn't even diagnose PTSD until 1980. So
right.
This is all through the 60s and 70s. And my dad, we don't have any idea, we call it shell shock, but it was nothing like, we didn't know the magnitude of that. And then my dad also marched across Europe, and he was in the Battle of the Bulge, freezing just poor, and all these young people, these leaders, and your show I watched about the Contra. I mean, that was amazing what you were saying, and it's so true. All the poor soldiers out there giving their lives for the politician who wants power, basically, is what war is, and it's just a sin, and it's thou shalt not kill. It's just a sin. And there was a song I was going to send you, and I forgot to do it, but. Have you heard Jackson Brown's song "Lives in the Balance"?
Oh yes,
and that's all about the Contra thing.
I love that album. And For America, what a song!
Yeah, that's an amazing song. And when I was watching your show, I was gonna send that to you, but I don't know. It's something I don't know why I didn't. But
no, I about wore that cassette. Out. I really did. Do you remember George Carlin, who I think embodied? That idea of the hippie that persevered.
Sure. Yeah.
And he said that World War I, it was shell shock, the sound of it, 2 syllables, shell shock. And then it was battle fatigue. Then it was post-traumatic stress disorder. Okay. And he kind of takes a moment and he says, maybe when the guys came back from Vietnam, if they called it shell shock, they may have gotten the help that they needed. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
It's an interesting thing. So we are almost to the hour. So I want to talk about, I just want to say, folks, this book is beautifully done. So many photos, and you went out to get photos very carefully chosen, but then also went to the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission. And
yeah, they were great, man.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. The woman, Chrissy from the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission, I saw this really cool picture on their website, and I'm going to try to flip through here real quick. And this picture right here, I swear that is the counter I was sitting at when I met the 2 guys who took me all the way to Jersey. I saw that picture. I'm like, this is great, but it says cannot be used without permission, or the legal thing. So I called, and I went through a lot of hoops, and this woman named Chrissy called me back from the Turnpike Commission, and I told her that I wanted to use. I asked her if I could use a picture. She said, "Oh, by all means." She said, "What do you need it for?" And I said, "Well, I ran away from home." She said, "Oh," and she went and she spent all this time researching and got me these pictures. from that summer and of traffic and of the police, because I was afraid of the police the whole way, you know. And anytime I saw a cop, I was freaking out. I was as paranoid as could be, so they were just extremely helpful. Yes, and everybody I worked with was helpful. The Ocean City Detective Bureau helped me out. They gave me they gave me a tour of the facilities that I visited when I was there, not willingly the first time, but the second time, and it was so different. My memory of it that I had for all those years was so different from what it was really like, because we just remember things differently. You know, we had whatever we had to add whatever we do, and we subtract whatever we do. I had this vision of this huge room, and it was actually a small room. But anyway, and plus it's, you know, the room didn't change. But anyway.
Yeah. No, I get that. So it's kind of like another version of Lawrence Ferlinghetti's Coney Island of the Mind and Ocean City of the Mind.
Right. Yeah. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So let's, in the next 5-10 minutes, as we're wrapping up here, and we'll have to have you, Will. I'll have to have you back again. Forget that royal we stuff. I have to talk to the producers and work it out. But no,
good. So, I have to see if my agent will approve.
Well, there you go. I'll have my people talk to your people. There are no people, folks.
My people is me, and his people is Joey, and all of you. Thank you for being along. Thank you.
My Runaway Summer, the proceeds get donated to shelters for runaway youth, as if you need another reason to look at this, folks. It's a quick read. It's a wonderful read. It's full of great pictures. We're getting all kinds of messages in the chat room how much everybody likes you, which I told them they were going
God
to.
Bless you. Thank you. Thank you.
So let's celebrate you on a bigger scale here. So the power of story and uplifting and motivation. What are your Success That Rocks presentations? How did you come up with that? How long you've been doing it? What does it consist of?
Thank you for asking that. Actually, years ago, over 20 years ago, a friend of mine worked for the Area Agency on Aging, and she said, "My people are really down in the dumps. Can you come and give them some kind of a motivation?" So I thought, well, sure, you know, that's my life. You know, I never really thought of doing a presentation on it before. So I put together the makings of a presentation, and it took a lot of work to put together an hour presentation back then. I mean, it still does, but so I put together this presentation, and it has evolved into Success That Rocks. And I've actually given Success That Rocks actually all the way from Alaska down to the U.S. Virgin Islands and many states in between. I've been blessed to be able to do Success That Rocks. And Success That Rocks, of course, is a lot of key ways to make your life rock. Basically, it's all about making your life rock and making your friend's life and your family's life rock, because it's not all about me rocking, it's about everybody rocking. So I boil Success That Rocks down to 3 major things, and actually I call them the prism. I used a pink very similar to this, actually.
Very cool.
Thanks. I just gave this a big presentation at Penn State last week for the whole university. Actually, my class, we met in the big auditorium to allow other people to come, because it was my last class was last Thursday. God bless the people at Penn State who helped me so much. But I do it anyway, regardless. So I use this symbol of, you know, just taking the boring white light of life and put it through a prism and project it out to be Pink Floydish. And the 3 basic parts of the prism are responsibility. We are all responsible for our own lives, for our own actions. We are responsible for making what happens to us into what we make it into. It's totally us. I mean, there's also the responsibility formula, which is E plus R equals O. It's the event plus our reaction to the event is the outcome. It's never the event itself. We can blame the event, but it's our reaction. So it's our responsibility And if we, if somebody needs to seek professional help, that is their response. You got to do it, So the responsibility is the base. The next part of the triangle, and these are all equal. The next part is appreciating. My gosh, we have so much in this life to be appreciative of, to be thankful for. We have like 12 trillion cells in our body. I mean, so we have 12 trillion reasons to be happy right there, right there. And then most of us have a car that works. We live in a house. We have shelter. We have friends. We have relatives. There's so much to be thankful for. So we have responsibility, appreciation. And the third thing is giving. Be a giving soul. And I always add the caveat, give for the greater good, and the reason I say that is giving an alcoholic a drink is not the greater good. That is enabling. So the difference between enabling and giving for the greater good is if it makes that person or society better. So those are the three basic parts of success that rocks. And
I love it. That's
Thank
awesome. That's awesome. Every day I start with a mantra developed by a man named Gay Hendricks, who does the big leap in your zone of genius, and made a big impact on my life. But it's every day I expand in abundant success and love as I inspire those around me to do the same. And that's the key part. That second part is what makes that work.
Perfect.
So I think very aligned.
Yeah. That's perfect, man. I love that. I have to get that and adopt that, because that's beautiful. I really.
Yeah, I'll email it to you after the show. Yeah, it's wonderful. That's how I start every day, and it's that second part. You can't keep it all for yourself. You gotta let it flow. Tell us about your mindful writers retreats.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm involved with, I have a partner in the writers retreats. Her name is Kathy Shoup. She's from Pittsburgh. We put on these writers. We've done like at 23 or 24. We have them in the Laurel Highlands. What we do is we get a bunch of writers together. We have beautiful setting, beautiful place. Everybody has their own room, their own bathroom, their own privacy, but we typically write together in one big room, because there's that again, it's the positive vibes, that collective energy. You don't have to write in the writers room. We usually have about 20 people at each of our mindful writers retreats, and we do a morning walking meditation out in the forest, beautiful forest of the Laurel Highlands. Oh my gosh! And then during the day, you go out there and take a walk too. And then we do a seated meditation after lunch. And the only times we talk are during breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because it's focused writing time. It's quiet, intense writing time. And after you do the meditation, you just get into this zone. And then after dinner, you can either continue to write, or some people just hang out by the fire and we end up telling stories. And it's a heck of a camaraderie thing to be with all those other writers. You get to be really good friends, even if you're only talking at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And when you're out in the forest and you're quiet, I mean, you just don't speak. You're out there and visiting with the muse. And I've gotten so many amazing ideas when I'm out there in the forest. Actually, I just I'm revisiting a story I wrote when I was 18 called Wildflower. I lost it all those years ago, and I'm rewriting it and adding all kinds of things. And my muse just keeps talking to me. Actually, my muse is Wildflower. Actually, Wildflower is a combination of all of the beautiful parts of all of the beautiful women I've been blessed to know in my life. And so it's really fun to write it. And actually, I started it when I was in Bradford, which is where I was for the weekend, where I got that nice award. So it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. So, yes, Tanya, the retreats are amazing. I thank you for saying that. They really, really are amazing.
So there's not a teaching or a feedback or a workshop component. It's just people can come together, use that synergy, that energy to do their thing. Larry, you're talking about sitting out by the fire at night. That's the cool part of the West Virginia Writers Conference. When you get invited to that back patio with the old timers and a little double tap moonshine and
the patio is definitely that is where it's happening at the West Virginia Writers Conference. Definitely. Yeah. But the nice thing about the Mindful Writers, we have beginners and we have best-selling authors, and nobody's there to intimidate each other. But we don't ask people to share their stuff because it's a personal thing. We don't want to intimidate anybody, but it's just that, like you said, the spirit. Thank you for that. I know we're going past the time, but I'm really enjoying this. Thank you for having me.
No, we're okay. There's a couple other things I want to ask, and then I'll let you go. So what are you working on now? So school just broke. You got the summer ahead. What you working on? What projects?
Wildflower is
oh, nice. Okay, cool.
Revisiting Wildflower. It's coming along really, really well. Actually, it's a component of another book that I'm working on. Another book. Last fall or this time last year, the publisher I'm working with, Demi's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful woman. She suggested I write a Christmas story, and my partner for the writing retreat, Kathy Shoup, who's a phenomenal writer. I don't know if you know Kathy, but I
know the name. Yeah,
she's an amazing writer. She's such an inspiration to me. She kicks my butt when it needs to be kicked, which seems to be all the time. She's really, really good.
I can't believe that.
Kathy and Demi suggested I write a Christmas story, so I started to write a Christmas story, and I got into this. I really got into the Christmas story, and then I had another event happen in my life, so I changed focus and I started to write a story about autumn, actually, about the fall, and so it's a lot of fun. And from being a writer, well, you get lost in what you write. I mean, you're totally there. When I wrote this book, I was 15 years old again. And I remembered, when you really dig, I remembered things that I hadn't thought of in years. And I relived every minute there were things I didn't remember. I had to fill in gaps with things that I thought might have happened. But when you're there in the moment, I mean, when I get into the zone, I'm sure you're the same. I mean, when I'm in the zone, I can't even my insides could be splitting, and I don't even want to get up to go to the bathroom to take myself out of the zone, because it's an amazing feeling. It's like a trip, it's a trip. Yeah.
You go down and you make food and it's still sitting there 5 hours later next to you, like you're taking a couple of little crumbs or something. Gay Hendricks, to bring him up again, he calls it Einstein time. Just it goes away. Perfect. Like when I'm writing, I know, don't make plans, because 50 minutes 5 hours is gonna feel like 50 minutes. People are going, where the hell are you? What are you doing? I was following my bliss, man, as Joe Campbell says. So
exactly.
Tell us about Around the Yard with Larry Schardt. People are gonna want to get more of you. This is a way to do it.
Thank you. Yeah. Actually, every Wednesday I do a stroll through the yard with Larry Schardt. Actually, if I'm home on Wednesdays, sometimes like I'll be at the Pennsylvania Writers Conference in 2 weeks. So I'm going to make it Tuesday, but I tell some stories, and then I take people around the yard and we look at the things that have changed in the yard from week to week. I mean, it's amazing, the flowers and the plants and the evolution of the seasons through the yard. And it just kind of came together, and I call it the Stroll Through the Yard with Larry Schardt, because my name is spelled so weird that it's often mispronounced. So yard and shard rhyme. So just to get that right. But it started last year with my publisher. When I met her at the Penn Writers Conference, she said, your book's coming out in 2 weeks and we're going to do a Facebook Live. And I'd never done it before, and we did it. And then it just kind of evolved. It evolved from there. Thank you for asking. So please join me. And also please please become friends on Facebook. That's my main every day for thousands of days now. I try to post a story or something fun, just to get everybody into a positive state of mind as much as possible. And And if you'd like to email me for any reason, I'm not that great with email. I check my email, but I'm not that great with it. My email, I have several emails. I'm at Penn State email, but my regular email is larry@successthatrocks.com. Easy to remember. Or larryschardt.com, but they both go the same, or larryschardt@gmail.com, but larry@successthatrocks.com.
All right. So, guys, this is all in the chat room for you. The stroll. Join Larry. Larry, I say this I totally sincerely. When I get up in the morning, first thing I do is go to Facebook and read your post.
Oh, God bless you. Thank you.
Rise. I'm a pretty early riser, but you always beat me to it. So,
thank you. I'm up at 5 every day. That's kind of my target, 4:30 or 5. So
6:30 is my time. 6:30.
Okay.
My time of day. So I want to thank you. I'm so glad we did this.
Oh, God bless you. Thank you too. And thank you, nice people, for being along and for your comments. Wow, it means a lot. Thank you. God bless you all. And I love you. I don't know some of you, but I love you. That's for sure. And hopefully on the path of life we meet, and hopefully you're able to enjoy my book at some point. I mean, I'm not, I actually, I donate it. And I just think it's a fun read. And I think it puts you in the mind of somebody that was living in that era and afraid to go. I was more afraid to go home than I was to be on the street, but thank you. God bless you. Thank you.
Guys, I know it sounds like I'm a fanboy just because I'm an incredible fan of this band, and this is a true honor. But I read about 80 or 90 books a year, and this is one of my favorites from last year, and just inspiring.
You.
And
thank you.
Yeah, so all right, take care, my friend. I'm going to release you.
God bless you. Thank you, everybody. God bless you. Rock and roll.
All right, everyone. So thank you for joining us tonight. I want to do more of these shows and talk to writers and philosophers and positive people. So we're going to do that. We have some great heartwarming stories coming up this summer. A lot of variety. I'm going to let you go. I'll talk about it in the coming week. Next week, I'm going to do a repost, and I don't know what I'm going to do yet. Probably another writer that I really enjoyed talking to, and we'll go with that theme. So I'm going to repost because earlier in the day, next Thursday, I'm a guest of a radio show in the United Kingdom. And we're going to talk about some of the differences between spiritualism in the United States and in the UK. I'm going to talk about some prevalent cryptids here in the United States. So give a little taste of these things to the UK audience. So I'm very excited to do that. So I'll be posting about that as soon as the batter and all comes out. So thank you all so much. I told you were going to love Larry, and I'm sure that you did. So be well, take care, keep your vibration high, keep your candle lit, and hopefully we're going to change the direction of things. Good night, everyone.